The ice started coating everything in Westbridge, Vermont at 3 in the morning, and by dawn, my entire neighborhood looked like it had been dipped in glass. I stood at my kitchen window nursing my first cup of coffee, watching tree branches bow under the weight, power lines sagging dangerously low. The weather service had been warning us for days about this storm, and I had prepared like any sensible person would. My garage was stocked with firewood I had split myself over the past month. My generator was fueled and ready, and my wood splitter sat right where I had left it on my driveway, just outside the garage door where I could access it easily if I needed to process more wood during the storm. That last decision would turn out to be the biggest mistake I had made all winter. My name is Ryan Quincy, and I have lived in the Maplewood Heights subdivision for 5 years now. When I first moved here, the place seemed perfect. Good schools nearby for when I eventually settled down, quiet streets, well-maintained common areas. The HOA seemed reasonable enough during the initial meetings. The dues were not outrageous, and the rules appeared standard. No bright pink houses, keep your lawn maintained, do not park broken-down vehicles on the street. Simple stuff. Then Patricia Morrison became HOA president 2 years ago, and everything changed. Patricia was exactly what you would picture when someone says the words HOA president. 50-something years old, blonde hair cut in that distinctive speak-to-the-manager style. Always wearing pastel cardigans and pearl earrings even when she was just checking mailboxes. She drove a white Lexus SUV with a vanity plate that read "Bislife," and she treated the HOA bylaws like they were handed down from a mountaintop on stone tablets. I had managed to stay off her radar for the most part. I kept my lawn trimmed, my house painted in approved colors, my garbage cans hidden from street view except on collection days. I worked as a software engineer from home, kept to myself, and generally minded my own business. But Patricia had a way of finding violations where none existed, and she had been systematically working through the neighborhood looking for new revenue streams through fines. The ice storm hit on a Saturday morning in late January. By 8 in the morning, the power was out. By 9, the temperature in my house had already dropped 2 degrees. I was not worried, though. I had my wood stove, plenty of firewood, and I knew how to take care of myself. I fired up the wood stove in my living room, got a nice blaze going, and settled in with a book. My generator was keeping my refrigerator and a few essential circuits running. I was comfortable. At 10:30, someone started pounding on my door. I opened it to find Patricia standing on my porch, wrapped in a cream-colored parka that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Her face was pinched with cold and irritation. "Mr. Quincy," she said, not bothering with pleasantries, "I need you to move that equipment from your driveway immediately." I blinked at her. "What equipment?" "That industrial machinery you have parked in plain view. It is a direct violation of Section 7.3 of the HOA covenants. No commercial or industrial equipment may be stored in view of the street." "You mean my wood splitter?" I could not believe what I was hearing. In the middle of an ice storm. "The weather does not suspend the HOA rules, Mr. Quincy. I have been trying to reach you about this for the past week, but you have been ignoring my calls." That was a lie, and we both knew it. I checked my phone records religiously because Patricia had tried to claim I ignored her calls before. There had been nothing. "Patricia, the driveway is covered in ice. Everything is covered in ice. I am not moving anything right now. It is dangerous." Her expression hardened. "Then I will have to take action according to the bylaws. You have been warned." She turned on her heel, somehow not slipping despite the ice coating every surface, and marched back to her Lexus. I closed the door, shaking my head. The woman was unbelievable. I went back to my wood stove, added another log, and forgot about the whole interaction. I had bigger concerns, like making sure my pipes did not freeze and that I had enough firewood to last through what the weather service was now saying could be a 3-day power outage. 2 hours later, I heard a truck outside. A big truck with a loud diesel engine. I looked out my window and felt my blood pressure spike immediately. A tow truck was backing into my driveway, and Patricia was standing on the sidewalk directing the driver toward my wood splitter. I grabbed my coat and boots and rushed outside, nearly wiping out twice on the ice-covered walkway. "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" The tow truck driver looked uncomfortable. He was a younger guy, maybe mid-20s, with a scraggly beard and a company jacket that read Jerry's Towing and Recovery. "Sorry, man," he said. "I am just doing what I was hired to do." This lady said the HOA authorized the removal of unauthorized equipment. That unauthorized equipment is my personal property, and there is no rule against having a wood splitter on your own driveway. Patricia stepped forward, holding up her phone. Section 7.3 clearly states that no industrial or commercial equipment may be visible from the street. Your wood splitter qualifies as industrial equipment. It is a residential wood splitter. I use it to split firewood for my wood stove. The language of the covenant does not distinguish between residential and commercial industrial equipment. It is industrial equipment, therefore it must not be visible from the street. You were warned. You refused to comply. Now it is being removed, and you will be responsible for the towing and storage fees in addition to the fine for the initial violation. My hands were shaking, and not from the cold. You cannot do this. This is theft. This is enforcement of the covenants you agreed to when you purchased your home. If you would like to contest this, you may submit a written appeal to the HOA board within 30 days. The next board meeting is scheduled for February 15th. She looked at the tow truck driver. "Please continue." "Wait," I said, stepping toward my wood splitter. The driver had already hooked chains to it and was operating the winch. "This is insane. We are in the middle of an ice storm. I need that to process firewood if this storm lasts as long as they are saying it will." "You should have thought of that before violating the covenants." Patricia's voice was ice cold, colder than the storm howling around us. "You have plenty of firewood stacked in your garage. You will be fine." "How do you know how much firewood I have?" She did not answer that, which meant she had been snooping around my property. Probably during one of her neighborhood inspection walks that she claimed were about maintaining community standards, but were really about finding new things to fine people for. The wood splitter was on the tow truck bed now, secured with straps. The driver looked at me apologetically. "I really am sorry, man. I will take good care of it. It is going to Jerry's impound lot on Route 7. You can call them to arrange pickup once you settle up with the HOA." "This is robbery," I said, looking directly at Patricia. "You are stealing my property in the middle of an emergency. I am enforcing the rules that everyone agreed to follow. If you do not like it, you are welcome to sell your home and move somewhere without an HOA." She smiled, a thin, satisfied expression that made me want to scream. "Have a good day, Mr. Quincy. Stay warm." She walked back to her Lexus and drove away, carefully navigating the ice-covered streets. The tow truck followed, my wood splitter chained in the back like some kind of prisoner. I stood in my driveway in the middle of an ice storm, so angry I could barely see straight. The temperature was still dropping. Ice was accumulating on everything. The power company was saying it could be days before electricity was restored because lines were down all over the county. And Patricia Morrison had just stolen my wood splitter over a made-up HOA violation. I went back inside and started making phone calls. The first was to my lawyer, an old college friend named David who practiced civil law in Burlington. He did not answer. The call went to voicemail. Right. The power was out everywhere. He might not even have cell service. I tried the non-emergency police line next. That actually got through, but the dispatcher told me that unless I wanted to report an immediate danger to life or safety, they could not send anyone out. The entire police department was dealing with accidents, downed power lines, and actual emergencies. A civil dispute over HOA violations would have to wait. I spent the rest of Saturday alternating between feeding my wood stove and researching Vermont HOA laws on my phone. What I found was not encouraging. HOAs in Vermont had broad authority to enforce their covenants, including the ability to remove violations at the owner's expense. However, they were supposed to follow proper procedures, which typically included written notice and an opportunity to cure the violation before taking action. Patricia had not sent me any written notices. She claimed she had been trying to call me, but I had phone records proving otherwise. That might be enough to fight this, but it would take time and probably money for legal fees. Meanwhile, my wood splitter was sitting in an impound lot, racking up storage fees. By Sunday morning, the temperature outside had dropped to 15 degrees, and the ice was still coming down. My house was warm enough around the wood stove, but the rooms farther away were getting cold. I was going through firewood faster than I had anticipated, because I was trying to keep the whole house at a reasonable temperature. I was splitting some of the larger pieces by hand with an axe and a wedge when my phone rang. It was David, my lawyer friend. "Ryan, sorry I missed your call yesterday. The power is out at my house and my phone died. I am at my office now. They have a generator. What is going on?" I explained the situation while I worked, my breath fogging in the cold garage air. David listened without interrupting, which was usually a bad sign. "Okay," he said when I finished. "First question. Do you have a copy of the actual HOA covenants?" "Yeah, I have got the packet they gave me when I bought the house." "Good. Send me a picture of section 7.3. I want to see the exact language." I went inside, found the folder with all my HOA documents, and photographed the relevant section. It took forever to send because the cell service was barely working, but it eventually went through. David called me back 10 minutes later. Good news and bad news. The good news is that the language is vague enough that you can definitely argue a residential wood splitter is not what they meant by industrial equipment. The bad news is that fighting this is going to take time and money, and HOAs in Vermont can be real nightmares to deal with. They are banking on you not wanting to spend a couple $1,000s in legal fees over a piece of equipment you can get back for a few hundred in fines and towing charges. "It is the principle of the thing," I said. "She literally stole my property during an ice storm because she has some kind of power trip issue." I agree with you completely, but here is the reality. You can fight this and probably win, but it will take months and cost you more than just paying the fines. Or you can pay the fines under protest, get your equipment back, and then decide if you want to pursue it further. What is the wood splitter worth? I paid about $1,200 for it new. It is 2 years old, so maybe $800 used. And what are they charging you? I pulled up the email Patricia had sent me late Saturday night, after the towing. $250 fine for the violation. Towing was $300. Storage is $50 per day. So you are already at $600, and it is going up by $50 every day you do not get it back. Ryan, I hate to say this, but you need to get that equipment back before the storage fees exceed its value. Then we can talk about fighting the underlying fine. He was right, but I hated it. What about her not giving me proper notice? That is your best argument, and we can definitely use that. But Vermont law requires you to exhaust your administrative remedies with the HOA first. That means going through their appeal process. You file an appeal, they hold a hearing, you make your case. If they rule against you, then you can take it to court. The whole process takes months. Months during which she will keep finding more things to fine me for. Probably, yeah. Look, finish out the storm, get your equipment back, and then come see me at my office. We will talk about the long-term strategy. But right now, you need to protect yourself from accumulating costs. I thanked him and ended the call. He was giving me good advice, but it felt like surrender. Patricia was counting on exactly this, on people not wanting to spend the time and money to fight back even when they were in the right. Sunday afternoon, my neighbor to the north, an older man named Frank who had lived in Maplewood Heights since the subdivision was built, came over to check on me. Frank was in his 70s, a retired electrician who had moved here with his late wife 30 years ago. He was one of the few people in the neighborhood who had been willing to share his real opinions about Patricia and the HOA. "Heard she towed your wood splitter," he said, accepting the cup of coffee I offered him. We sat near the wood stove, the only warm spot in my house now. News travels fast. Patricia made sure everyone knows. She sent out an email blast this morning about the importance of covenant compliance even during emergencies. Frank shook his head. "Woman is a menace. She has been looking for an excuse to go after you ever since you refused to donate to her campaign to repave the walking paths last year." "I did not refuse to donate. I said I thought the paths were fine as they were and did not need repaving." "Same thing to her. Anyone who does not fall in line with her plans is an enemy." He sipped his coffee. "You know half the board is scared of her, right? She has dirt on everyone. Jim Carlson voted against one of her proposals 2 years ago, and suddenly there were all these violations on his property. Tree branches hanging over his roof, fence 3 inches too tall, mailbox not up to community standards. Cost him over $1,000 in fines and correction costs. After that, Jim rubber stamps everything she proposes. How has she not been voted out? Because no one wants to run against her. The last person who tried was Denise Farmer. Remember her? I did, vaguely. Denise had lived 4 houses down from me. I had not seen her in over a year. Patricia dug up the fact that Denise's husband had filed for bankruptcy 10 years ago. Started spreading rumors that Denise could not be trusted with HOA finances. Whisper campaign, nothing official, nothing Denise could fight directly. Denise lost the election and moved out 6 months later. Said the neighborhood had become toxic. That is insane. That is Patricia. Frank finished his coffee and stood. "Listen, I would watch your back. She is probably not done with you. In her mind, you challenged her authority by not immediately moving that splitter when she told you to. She will be looking for more violations, more ways to squeeze you." That was a cheerful thought. Frank left, and I spent the rest of Sunday monitoring the storm and rationing my firewood. The power company was now saying it might be Wednesday before power was restored to our area. The ice had brought down major transmission lines, and repair crews could not work safely until the storm passed. Monday morning, the ice finally stopped, but the temperature dropped even further. It was 8 degrees when I woke up, and the sun rising over all that ice created a blinding glare off every surface. My house was getting colder despite my best efforts with the wood stove. I was burning through my firewood supply faster than I wanted, and I was already starting to think about what I would do if the power was not back by Wednesday. At noon, my phone rang. Unknown number, local area code. "Mr. Quincy. This is Brenda from Jerry's Towing and Recovery. I am calling about your wood splitter that we picked up on Saturday." "What about it?" "Well, we have had a situation develop here. The The property owner where we are storing it, he wants it moved, says it is taking up too much space. We are going to have to relocate it to our overflow lot in Middlebury. That is going to be an additional transport fee of $150, and the storage rate at that facility is $75 per day instead of $50. You have got to be kidding me. I am sorry, Mr. Quincy, but we need to move it by end of business today, or we will have to charge you for the transport anyway. If you want to avoid the additional fees, you can come pick it up today. You just need to settle the outstanding balance with the HOA and provide proof of payment, then pay our towing and storage fees, and you can take it. This was clearly Patricia's doing. She had probably called the towing company and pressured them to move it, just to run up my costs even more. I will be there in an hour, I said. I called Patricia's number. It went to voicemail. Patricia, this is Ryan Quincy. I want to settle the outstanding fines and get my equipment back. Call me back immediately. She did not call back. I tried again. Voicemail again. I sent an email. No response. I called David. She is dodging me. How do I pay a fine if she will not accept payment? She has to provide you with a way to pay. Check your HOA portal online. There should be an option to pay fines there. I checked. The portal was down. Of course it was. I got in my truck and drove to Patricia's house. The roads were terrible, ice everywhere, but I made it. Her Lexus was in the driveway. I walked up to her door and knocked. No answer. I knocked again, harder. Patricia, I know you are home. I need to pay the fine so I can get my equipment back. The door opened. Patricia stood there in yoga pants and a cashmere sweater, looking annoyed. Mr. Quincy, you cannot just show up at my home. You would not answer your phone or emails. I need to settle the fine. The HOA office hours are Wednesdays from 3 to 5 p.m. You can pay then. That is 2 days away and the storage fees are going up. I want to pay now. Office hours are office hours, Mr. Quincy. She started to close the door. I put my hand on the door frame, not pushing, just preventing it from closing. This is harassment. You are deliberately preventing me from resolving this. Remove your hand from my property or I will call the police. I removed my hand. She shut the door in my face. I stood there on her porch, shaking with anger, and pulled out my phone. I took pictures of her Lexus in the driveway, pictures of her house number, pictures showing I was standing at her door. Then I called the non-emergency police line again. This time, I got through to an actual officer. I explained the situation, keeping my voice calm and factual. The officer listened and then sighed. Sir, this is a civil matter between you and your HOA. We cannot force her to accept payment outside of the designated times. But she is running up my storage costs by refusing to let me pay. Again, that is a civil matter. You will need to work it out with the HOA or contact a lawyer. Unless she is threatening you or you are in immediate danger, we cannot get involved. I thanked him and ended the call. This was unbelievable. I drove to Jerry's towing. The owner, Jerry himself, was there. He was a big guy in his 50s with grease-stained hands and a sympathetic expression. Look, he said, I feel bad about this whole thing. That HOA lady, she has been calling here every day pressuring me to move your splitter to the more expensive lot. I'm just trying to run a business, you know. I do not want to get in the middle of whatever is going on between you two. Can I pay you directly for the towing and storage and deal with the HOA fine separately? No can do. She made me sign a contract saying I would not release the equipment without proof that all HOA fines were settled. If I release it without that proof, she can sue me for breach of contract. This is extortion. I agree with you, man, but my hands are tied. I drove home defeated. By Monday night, my firewood supply was getting low. I had maybe 2 more days' worth if I was careful. 3 if I let the temperature in my house drop into the 50s. The power company was still saying Wednesday for restoration, but that was looking optimistic. Tuesday morning, I woke up to 45 degrees inside my house. I had let the fire die down overnight to conserve wood. I got it going again, but I was down to my last quarter cord of split wood, plus some larger rounds that I could not split without my wood splitter. At 10 a.m., Patricia sent out an email to the entire neighborhood. The subject line was Community Standards During Emergencies. Dear Maplewood Heights residents, it began. I want to take a moment during these challenging times to remind everyone that our community standards do not disappear during emergencies. In fact, maintaining these standards is more important than ever to preserve property values and neighborhood cohesion. I am proud to report that we recently took action against a serious covenant violation involving industrial equipment stored in violation of our bylaws. This action demonstrates our commitment to enforcing the standards that make Maplewood Heights such a desirable place to live. As always, if you observe any violations, please report them to the HOA board immediately. She had not even named me, but everyone would know who she was talking about. I could already see my phone lighting up with texts from neighbors. Wednesday morning, the power came back on at 11 a.m. I had never been so happy to hear my refrigerator hum to life. But I was down to less than a day's worth of firewood, and the forecast was showing another cold front moving in over the weekend. At 3 p.m., I showed up at Patricia's house for HOA office hours. She answered the door with that same tight smile. Mr. Quincy, are you here to settle your outstanding violations? Yes. How much do I owe? The original violation fine of $250, plus late fees of $10 per day for failure to promptly address the violation. That is another $40, total of $290. Cash or check only. Late fees. I was never given a chance to pay promptly. You could have paid during office hours last Wednesday, before you had my equipment towed. I did not even know about the violation until Saturday morning. The violation existed whether you knew about it or not. The late fees are calculated from when the violation was first observed, which was last Tuesday. This was insane, but I needed my equipment back. I wrote her a check for $290. She examined it carefully, then wrote me a receipt. There, she said, your fine is settled. You may now retrieve your property from Jerry's towing. I drove straight to Jerry's. The total there was $300 for towing, plus $50 per day for 4 days of storage. $200 more. $590 total to get back my $800 wood splitter, all because Patricia wanted to flex her authority. Jerry helped me load it into my truck. Glad this worked out for you, man. That HOA lady is something else. You have no idea. I got the wood splitter back home, backed it into my garage this time where it would be out of sight, and spent the rest of Wednesday splitting wood. By evening, I had replenished my supply and felt like I could breathe again. Thursday morning, I got another email from Patricia. Dear Mr. Quincy, during a routine inspection yesterday, I observed that you have stacked firewood on the side of your house in a manner that exceeds the height limitations specified in Section 9.7 of the HOA covenants. Firewood stacks visible from the street may not exceed 4 feet in height. Your current stack appears to exceed this limit. Please reduce the height of your firewood stack within 72 hours or face additional fines. Regards, Patricia Morrison, HOA President. I went outside and looked at my firewood stack. It was maybe 4 feet 2 inches tall. I had stacked it there 3 years ago and nobody had ever said a word about it. She was coming after me now, just like Frank had warned. This was retaliation for not rolling over immediately when she had come after my wood splitter. I took pictures of the firewood stack, measurements showing it was barely over the limit, and started documenting everything. If Patricia wanted a war, I was ready to fight. Friday afternoon, I was in my garage working when I heard sirens. Multiple vehicles, close by. I walked out to the street and saw fire trucks at the end of the block. Smoke was rising from somewhere in the neighborhood. I walked closer, following a growing crowd of neighbors. The smoke was coming from Patricia's house. The fire was not major. It looked like it had started in the fireplace and gotten out of control, probably from using the fireplace improperly. The fire department had it under control quickly, but there was visible smoke damage to Patricia's living room. I felt a strange mix of emotions watching it. Schadenfreude, yes, but also concern because I was not a monster. I did not want anyone to get hurt, even Patricia. The fire chief was talking to Patricia on her lawn. She looked shaken, wrapped in a blanket despite the expensive parka she was wearing. I could hear parts of the conversation. "Madam, you are lucky it did not spread. Using unseasoned firewood in an indoor fireplace creates excessive creosote buildup. Combined with the fact that you clearly have not had this chimney cleaned recently, you are fortunate this was not much worse." Patricia was saying something about the power outage, about having to use her fireplace because her heating system had been overwhelmed. The fire chief was explaining proper fireplace safety, and Patricia was nodding but not really listening. That is when I noticed something. Several of my neighbors were standing in small groups, all of them looking cold despite heavy coats. Martha Chen, who lived 2 houses down from Patricia, was telling someone that her heating system could not keep up during the power outage and still had not fully recovered. Bill Rodriguez, across the street from me, was complaining that his furnace kept cutting out and he was worried about his pipes freezing. I started to put it together. Most of my neighbors did not have wood stoves. They relied entirely on their electric or natural gas heating systems. During the extended power outage, their houses had gotten cold. Now, even with power back, many of them were having trouble getting their homes back up to temperature. The prolonged cold had caused issues with heating systems, frozen condensate lines, furnaces that did not want to restart properly. And none of them had backup heating sources like I did. I went home and tried to put the whole drama out of my mind. I had work to catch up on. The power outage had put me behind on several projects. I spent Friday evening and most of Saturday in front of my computer, making up for lost time. Saturday evening, someone knocked on my door. It was Jim Carlson, one of the HOA board members that Frank had mentioned. Jim looked uncomfortable. "Ryan, hey, can I talk to you for a minute?" "Sure, come in." Jim stepped inside, looking around at my warm, comfortable living room. My wood stove was putting out steady heat. The house was cozy. "Your place is nice and warm," Jim said. "Wood stove. I am a big believer in having backup heat." Yeah, that is actually kind of what I wanted to talk to you about." Jim shifted his weight awkwardly. "Look, I know you and Patricia have been having some conflicts lately. That is putting it mildly." "Right. Well, the thing is, a lot of people in the neighborhood are having heating problems right now. Furnaces not working right after the power outage, heating systems not keeping up with the cold. And there is another storm coming in next week, supposed to be even worse than the last one. I heard about that. Patricia's house is pretty much unlivable right now because of the smoke damage from her fire. She is staying with her sister in Montpelier, but before she left, she asked me to reach out to you about something." I waited. "She was wondering if you might be willing to sell some of your firewood to neighbors who need it. With your wood splitter, you can process more wood than most people. Several folks in the neighborhood are desperate for alternative heat sources. The audacity of this was breathtaking. Patricia had stolen my wood splitter during an ice storm, cost me nearly $600 in fines and fees, and now she wanted me to help people because she had not planned ahead. Jim, I have enough firewood for my own needs, but I do not have extra to sell. I am sorry your neighbors are struggling, but that is not my problem. Ryan, come on. People are going to be in trouble if this next storm is as bad as they are saying. Then they should have prepared better. I did. I had a wood splitter to help me prepare, and Patricia had it stolen from me. She did not steal it. She enforced an HOA rule. A rule she made up on the spot to harass me. Jim, she towed my wood splitter during an ice storm over a bogus violation, refused to let me pay the fine for days so the storage fees would rack up, and has been targeting me with petty violations ever since. And now she wants my help. No. Patricia admits she maybe came on a little strong about the wood splitter thing. A little strong. But she is willing to forgive the other violations she cited if you will help some neighbors get through this next storm. The other violations. You mean the firewood stack that has been sitting in the exact same spot for 3 years that suddenly became a problem this week? Those violations. Jim had the decency to look embarrassed. Look, I am just the messenger here. The answer is no. I am not selling my firewood. I am not helping Patricia save face, and I am not forgetting that your HOA board stole my property and extorted $600 from me for no legitimate reason. Ryan, be reasonable. I am being completely reasonable. Patricia made her choices. She can live with the consequences. Now, if you will excuse me, I have things to do. Jim left, looking defeated. I felt a small twinge of guilt. These were my neighbors, people I saw at the grocery store and waved to on the street. But Patricia had to learn that actions had consequences. She could not just bully people and expect them to come running when she needed help. Sunday morning, I got a call from a number I did not recognize. I answered it. Mr. Quincy, this is Margaret Chen. I live on Maple Drive, 2 houses down from Patricia Morrison. Hi, Margaret. What can I do for you? I heard you might have firewood for sale. My furnace is not working properly since the power outage, and my husband and I are elderly. We are very worried about this next storm. This was harder. Margaret and her husband Henry were both in their 80s. They were nice people, always smiled and waved when I drove by. Margaret, I am sorry, but I do not have extra firewood to sell. I have enough for my own needs, but that is it. Oh, she sounded close to tears. I understand, thank you anyway. She hung up. I felt like garbage. Over the next few hours, I got 3 more calls. Bill Rodriguez, asking if I had firewood. Sarah Armstrong, asking if I could split some wood for her if she bought logs. Frank, my retired electrician neighbor, asking if I had any advice for people whose furnaces were not working right. The word had clearly spread. Ryan has firewood and a wood splitter. Ryan can help, but I was not going to help. Not after what Patricia had put me through. Sunday afternoon, Frank came over again. He did not ask about firewood. He just wanted to talk. You know Patricia is spinning this, right? He said. Spinning what? The fact that you will not sell firewood. She is telling people that you are being selfish, that you are putting the whole community at risk because you are still mad about the wood splitter thing. She is making you out to be the bad guy. Of course she is. That is what she does. I know. And I do not blame you for telling her to pound sand, but I wanted you to know what is being said. Frank paused. For what it is worth, I think you are in the right here. Patricia created this situation. She should not get bailed out of it. Thank you. But Ryan, some of the people calling you, like Martha and Henry Chen, they are not Patricia. They are just scared people who did not prepare properly for a storm. I am not saying you should help everyone. I am just saying you might want to think about who you are punishing here. He left me with that thought. I spent Sunday evening thinking about it. Frank was right. The people calling me were not Patricia. They were neighbors who were genuinely struggling. But if I helped them, Patricia would claim credit for facilitating it. She would use it as evidence that she was a good HOA president who brought the community together during a crisis. And if I did not help, people might genuinely suffer during the next storm. It was a no-win situation. Monday morning, the Weather Service upgraded their forecast. The next storm was going to be bigger than the last one. Heavy ice and snow starting Tuesday night and lasting through Friday. Possible power outages lasting a week or more. Temperatures dropping into the single digits. My phone was ringing constantly now. More neighbors asking about firewood, about my wood splitter, about whether I could help them. I stopped answering. Monday afternoon, Patricia called me directly. I almost did not answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Mr. Quincy, this is Patricia Morrison. I think we need to have a conversation. I am listening. I am prepared to offer you a deal. I will void all the fines related to your wood splitter violation and refund the $290 you paid. In exchange, you will agree to provide firewood to any Maplewood Heights resident who needs it during the upcoming storm at reasonable market rates. What about the towing and storage fees? That was another $300. The HOA is not responsible for those costs. Those were incurred due to your failure to promptly address the violation. I was not given a chance to promptly address anything, Patricia. You had my equipment towed the same day you told me about the supposed violation during an ice storm while I was trying to prepare for an extended power outage. I followed the procedures outlined in the covenants. You followed your own made-up interpretation of vague language to harass me, and now you want me to bail you out because people are angry that they are not prepared for the next storm. There was a long pause. Mr. Quincy, I am trying to help the community here. You are trying to cover your own behind. You know what, Patricia? Here is my counter-offer. You refund all the money I paid in fines. You reimburse me for the towing and storage fees. You put in writing that the wood splitter violation was in error, and that I am allowed to keep my wood splitter anywhere on my property that I want. You resign as HOA president, and you publicly apologize to me and the entire neighborhood for your conduct. Then and only then will I consider helping people with firewood. That is ridiculous. I am not resigning. Then we have nothing to discuss. You are willing to let your neighbors suffer just to spite me. No, Patricia. You are willing to let them suffer rather than admit you were wrong. Do not try to put this on me. You created this situation. I hung up on her. 10 minutes later, Jim Carlson called me. Ryan, Patricia said you are demanding she resign. You cannot expect that. Actually, I can. She abused her authority, cost me $600 for no legitimate reason, and has been systematically harassing me. Yes, I expect her to resign. That is the price for my help. Ryan, be realistic. I am being completely realistic. Patricia has a choice to make. Her pride or her neighbor's safety. Let's see what she values more. I hung up on Jim too. The rest of Monday was quiet. No more calls. No more emails. I assumed Patricia was trying to find another solution. Someone else with firewood or a wood splitter, some way to solve the problem without giving in to my demands. Tuesday morning, the storm started. Ice first, coating everything again. Then snow, heavy and wet. The power went out at noon. My wood stove was roaring. I had plenty of firewood. I was comfortable. I tried not to think about my neighbors. Tuesday afternoon, someone pounded on my door. It was Jim Carlson again, but this time he was not alone. He had brought two other board members, David Song and Rita Palmer. "Ryan, we need to talk," Jim said when I opened the door. "Come in. It is freezing out there." They filed inside, all of them immediately gravitating toward my wood stove. My house was warm, comfortable. They were all shivering. "We just came from an emergency board meeting," Rita said. She was a woman in her 60s, a retired teacher. Patricia refused to attend remotely. She said she was too busy dealing with her house damage. "Okay," I said. "What does that have to do with me?" "We voted," David said. He was younger than the others, maybe 40, an accountant. 3-1, with Patricia abstaining. "We are invalidating the fines against you, all of them. The wood splitter violation, the firewood stack violation, everything. We are also voting to reimburse you for the towing and storage fees you incurred." I blinked in surprise. "Seriously?" "Seriously," Rita said. "Patricia's conduct toward you was inappropriate. We all know it. We should have stopped it sooner, but honestly, we were scared of her. She has a way of making life difficult for anyone who opposes her." "What about her resigning?" "We cannot force her to resign," Jim said. "But we can make it clear that we will not support her in the next election, and we can start actually checking her actions instead of rubber stamping everything she proposes. Patricia has been running this HOA like her personal fiefdom for too long." "So what do you want from me?" "We want to know if you will help people who need firewood during this storm," Rita said. "Not for Patricia, for the community. We have families with young children who are struggling to keep their homes warm. We have elderly people like Martha and Henry Chen who could genuinely be in danger if the power is out for a week." I looked at the three of them, standing in my warm living room making this request. They had finally stood up to Patricia. That counted for something. "I will help," I said. "But I am not doing this for free, and I am not doing it for Patricia. I want fair market value for the firewood, and I want it made clear to everyone that I am doing this despite Patricia's actions, not because of them." "Fair enough," David said. "And one more thing. I want a written statement from the HOA board acknowledging that the violation Patricia cited was invalid, and I want it emailed to every resident in Maplewood Heights." The three of them looked at each other. Jim nodded. "We can do that. Then I will help. Anyone who needs firewood can call me. I will charge $50 per quarter cord, which is below market rate, and I will work with people who cannot afford that. I am not trying to price gouge anyone." Rita actually hugged me. "Thank you, Ryan. You are a good person." I was not sure about that, but I was willing to help now that the board had done the right thing. Over the next 3 days, I split and delivered firewood to 17 different households in Maplewood Heights. I worked from dawn until after dark, running my wood splitter constantly, loading my truck, making deliveries. It was exhausting, but it felt good to actually help people. Martha and Henry Chen cried when I delivered firewood to them. I did not charge them anything. They were on a fixed income, and they genuinely needed help. Sarah Armstrong's 5-year-old daughter drew me a thank you picture. It showed me as a superhero with a cape, holding a log and a chainsaw. I hung it on my refrigerator. Even Bill Rodriguez, who I had never particularly liked, shook my hand and thanked me sincerely. Patricia never called, never texted, never acknowledged what I was doing. She stayed at her sister's house in Montpelier for the entire week, only returning after the storm passed and the power was restored. When she did return, she found that her position as HOA president had fundamentally changed. The board was no longer rubber stamping her decisions. Residents were no longer scared to question her. I had become a minor neighborhood hero, the guy who helped everyone during the storm, and Patricia could not touch me without looking petty. 2 weeks after the second storm, the HOA held its scheduled board meeting. I attended for the first time since moving to Maplewood Heights. Patricia was there, sitting at the head table with the other board members, but something was different. She looked smaller somehow, less commanding. Her usual confidence was gone. The meeting covered routine business first. Budget updates, landscaping plans for spring, pool maintenance schedules. Then they got to new business. Jim Carlson stood up. I would like to make a motion to amend Section 7.3 of the HOA covenants to specifically clarify that residential equipment, including but not limited to wood splitters, lawn tractors, and similar items, are not considered industrial equipment and are therefore allowed to be visible from the street, provided they are maintained in good working condition. Second, Rita Palmer said immediately. Patricia's face went white. This is completely unnecessary. The current language is adequate. The current language is vague and has led to enforcement problems, David Song said. We need clear guidelines that do not leave room for interpretation. All those in favor, Jim said. 4 hands went up. Jim, Rita, David, and Susan Young, the 5th board member who I had not met before. Everyone except Patricia. Motion passes, Jim said. Patricia looked like she had swallowed a lemon. I would like to note my objection for the record. Noted, Jim said. Next item. I would like to make a motion to establish a formal appeals process for HOA violations. Under this process, any resident who receives a violation notice will have 14 days to cure the violation or file an appeal before any fines or enforcement actions are taken. Second, Rita said. This one passed 4-1 again. They went through 3 more motions, all of them aimed at limiting the HOA president's unilateral authority and establishing clearer procedures. Patricia objected to all of them. All of them passed 4-1. At the end of the meeting, Patricia stood up. Her voice was tight, controlled. I would like to announce that I will not be seeking re-election as HOA president. Clearly, this board has lost sight of the importance of maintaining community standards. I refuse to be party to the deterioration of property values in Maplewood Heights. She gathered her things and walked out without another word. The room was silent for a moment. Then someone started clapping. It was Frank, my retired electrician neighbor. Others joined in. Within seconds, the entire room was applauding. Rita Palmer was elected the new HOA president 2 weeks later, running unopposed. Her first act was to formally apologize to me at a community meeting for the way I had been treated. Her second act was to send Patricia a notice of violation. Apparently, the smoke damage to Patricia's house from her fireplace incident had left visible exterior staining that needed to be addressed. Patricia had 14 days to clean it up or file an appeal, per the new procedures. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that Patricia was furious, but there was nothing she could do about it. 3 months later, Patricia's house went up for sale. The listing price was aggressive, clearly aimed at getting out quickly. She moved to Montpelier to live with her sister permanently. The neighborhood threw a block party the week after she moved out. Nobody said it was a celebration of her departure, but everyone knew that was exactly what it was. I brought firewood for a bonfire. People roasted marshmallows and told stories. Martha and Henry Chen's grandson played guitar. It was the first time the neighborhood had felt like an actual community in years. As for me, I kept my wood splitter in my driveway all through the following winter, visible from the street. Nobody said a word about it. In fact, several neighbors bought their own wood splitters and asked me for advice on using them. The HOA board actually started functioning like a real board instead of Patricia's rubber stamp committee. They made reasonable decisions, listened to residents, and focused on actual community improvement instead of petty enforcement actions. property values did not deteriorate like Patricia had predicted. If anything, they went up slightly because people actually wanted to live in Maplewood Heights again. I never got a direct apology from Patricia, but I did not need one. Watching her lose everything she had spent years building through her own petty tyranny was satisfaction enough. And when the next winter storm rolled around, my wood splitter was right there in my driveway, ready to go. Because in the end, preparation and common sense had won out over petty bureaucratic nonsense. That was not quite the end of the story, though. About 6 months after Patricia moved out, I was served with legal papers. Patricia was suing me for defamation, claiming I had spread false information about her that damaged her reputation and contributed to her decision to sell her house at a loss. I called David, my lawyer friend, immediately. He reviewed the complaint and actually laughed. "Ryan, this is the weakest defamation case I have seen in years. She has no evidence that you said anything false about her. Everything you told people was factually accurate and documented. Plus, truth is an absolute defense to defamation. She is just angry and lashing out. So what do? We file a motion to dismiss, which the judge will grant. Then we countersue for legal fees and malicious prosecution. She's going to end up paying your legal bills for filing this frivolous lawsuit." That is exactly what happened. The judge dismissed Patricia's case within 30 days, calling it utterly without merit. My countersuit for legal fees was successful, and Patricia ended up paying me $4,000 to cover my attorney costs. That money went straight into my Firewood fund. I bought a better chainsaw and a larger wood splitter. When the next winter came around, I was even better prepared than before. The neighborhood had learned its lesson too. At least a dozen families now had wood stoves or other backup heating sources. Several people had bought generators. We had formed an informal emergency preparedness group that met quarterly to share information and resources. Rita Palmer, as HOA president, actually supported these efforts instead of fighting them. She organized group buys for generators and firewood. She revised the HOA covenants to explicitly allow backup power equipment and alternative heating sources. She turned the HOA into what it was supposed to be all along, an organization that helped the community instead of controlling it. I ran into Patricia one more time about a year after she had moved out. I was at a Home Depot in Burlington buying supplies and I saw her in the checkout line. She saw me too. For a moment, we just looked at each other. She looked older, more tired. The perfectly styled hair was a bit mussed. The expensive clothes were gone, replaced with ordinary jeans and a fleece jacket. She looked like a normal person instead of an HOA president drunk on petty power. I nodded to her. She looked away quickly and finished her transaction without acknowledging me. I felt a moment of pity for her, but only a moment. She had made her choices. She had chosen power and control over community and cooperation. She had chosen to punish people rather than help them, and in the end, those choices had cost her everything. As for me, I was doing fine. Better than fine, actually. My house was warm, my firewood was stacked and ready, my wood splitter sat proudly in my driveway where it belonged. I had good neighbors, a functional HOA, and the satisfaction of knowing I had stood up for what was right even when it was difficult. Sometimes I thought about that morning when Patricia had shown up at my door during the ice storm, demanding I move my wood splitter. If I had just complied, moved it into the garage, kept my head down, none of the drama would have happened. My life would have been simpler. But I also would not have learned what I was capable of standing up for. I would not have helped 17 families stay warm during a dangerous storm. I would not have been part of changing an entire neighborhood's culture from one of fear and compliance to one of cooperation and mutual support. So no, I did not regret standing my ground against Patricia Morrison and her petty tyranny. Not for a second. The wood splitter stayed in my driveway, a daily reminder that sometimes you have to fight for what is right, even when it is hard. Especially when it is hard. And every time I used it to split firewood, every time I loaded up my wood stove on a cold winter night, every time a neighbor stopped by to ask for advice or help, I remembered that preparation and principle had won out over power and pettiness. That was a lesson worth learning, even if it cost me $600 and a month of stress to learn it. Years later, I would still see former Maplewood Heights residents at various places around Vermont. They would always stop to chat, always ask how things were going in the neighborhood. And they would always mention Patricia, usually with a shake of their head and a comment about how much better things were now that she was gone. The neighborhood had become a cautionary tale in the local community about HOA overreach, the kind of story people told when explaining why they would never buy a house with an HOA. But it also became a story about standing up for yourself, about communities coming together, about how ordinary people could make a difference when they refused to be bullied. My wood splitter, sitting in my driveway in clear violation of Patricia's interpretation of Section 7.3, had become a minor local landmark. People giving directions would say, "Turn left at the house with the wood splitter in the driveway." New residents would ask about it, and neighbors would tell them the whole story. I thought about putting it in the garage a few times, just to reduce the attention. But every time I considered it, I would remember Patricia's face when she directed that tow truck driver to take it away. Remember the sound of my neighbors applauding when she announced she would not seek re-election. Remember Martha Chen crying with relief when I delivered firewood to her during that second storm. The wood splitter stayed in the driveway. It was more than just a tool now. It was a symbol of what happened when ordinary people stood up to petty tyrants. It was a reminder that communities were stronger than the individuals who tried to control them. It was proof that preparation, principle, and perseverance could overcome even the most determined bureaucratic bully. And on cold winter nights, when I was sitting by my wood stove with a warm drink, listening to the wind howl outside, I would think about Patricia Morrison sitting in her sister's house in Montpelier, probably still bitter about everything that had happened, probably still convinced she had been right all along. I did not hate her. I actually felt sorry for her in a way. She had let her need for control and authority destroy her relationships, her reputation, and ultimately her place in a community she claimed to care about. She had confused leadership with domination, community standards with personal preferences, authority with power. But mostly, I was just grateful. Grateful for neighbors like Frank who warned me what was coming. Grateful for board members like Jim, Rita, and David, who finally found the courage to stand up to her. Grateful for families like the Chens who reminded me why community mattered. Grateful for a justice system that protected me when Patricia tried one last petty attack through her frivolous lawsuit. And grateful for my wood splitter, which had somehow become the catalyst for changing an entire neighborhood's culture for the better. So that is the story of how my HOA towed my firewood splitter during an ice storm, and then begged me to come back when their heat ran out. It is a story about petty tyranny and community resistance, about preparation and principle, about standing up for yourself even when it costs you something. But mostly, it is a story about a wood splitter in a driveway, and the woman who could not stand that it was there, and the community that decided they had had enough of being controlled by someone else's arbitrary interpretation of the rules. The wood splitter is still in my driveway, by the way, right where it belongs, and Patricia Morrison is still in Montpelier, probably still fuming about HOA violations that nobody cares about anymore. I know which situation I would rather be in, and I am pretty sure anyone reading this does too.